Hello and good afternoon, and welcome to the Offshoot. I'm the host, Lee Sean Nelson, and today I have a guest by the name of Dawnta Million, a young entrepreneur in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. He also is a father of three. Dawnta, welcome to the Offshoot.
Thank you, Sean, for inviting me on your show.
Very, very glad to have you. So I want to talk to you specifically because you are a young entrepreneur in this big area, if you will, and you also have three young boys. So you're a young father. So let me first ask you, what does it mean to protect? What's your definition of that? And then tell me, what are you doing to protect your young men, your boys?
Well, to protect, that is that's a big job. As a
Yeah.
like just as an individual, you think of somebody that protects the life of the president. You know, that life is valuable to the state. And
Mhm.
they're charged to protect that seat, no matter who's in that seat. Their job is to put their life on the line and their expertise to protect that person. So as a father, your job is to do that same thing with your children.
Mhm.
So that means from all surroundings, from all aspects of life, it's your duty to protect your child. You
And
know, uh,
your boys are young. So what are their ages again?
10, 8, and 6.
So very, very young ages.
Yes,
They
sir.
are, and so they're at also at an age where they're inquisitive, where they have, questions maybe.
Absolutely.
Okay, okay. So
Absolutely.
yeah. So what can you tell me has been going on in your world where you feel that it's important to talk about protecting Black Americans, and what does it mean? So what has been going on in your life, and what do you see out there, and what do you see is the need?
Well, I think one thing that we have to bring back to the Black family is the protecting the sanctity of fatherhood. Let's start at home first before we go out into the community. Is establishing a strong home structure, home base, even if the couple is not together. Making sure that the fathers are involved in the children's life. Um, Giving them that positive male role model, a positive structure, that the best to that ability of that father, because every father is different.
Hmm.
But giving that platform where children are no longer, struggling with daddy issues, you know,
Yeah.
I think that is a very important duty for the men to step up and be responsible for their own seed. That's the first line of protection, is a man and his child.
Well, I want
Um,
to, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Dante, but I want to actually now change something here because I want to stay on this topic of what you said. The first thing is protecting the sanctity of fatherhood. Okay, because I don't think I've heard anyone talk about protecting fatherhood the way you just described it. And I also don't think I've heard anyone talk about it in terms of protecting the fatherhood of Black men in particular.
Well, it's been
Let's
under
do the,
it's under attack. It's constantly under attack. Not only from the systematic oppression, from the historical line of our sojourn here in America. The Black man, specifically the head of household of the Black family, has been under attack. Each generation after generation, there's government documentation of them purposely attacking us, attacking our leadership, attacking our progress, attacking our
or remove from the home
neighborhoods.
itself, remove from the
Yeah,
home in terms of,
or
yeah.
specifically when they built high rises, HUD buildings, and high rise projects. The main thing is when you were assigned a caseworker is that the man could not be in the home, you
Hmm.
know, and it was inciting that the woman had to basically had all these children,
Hmm.
uh, with no father, with no head, no leadership,
Hmm.
so
So,
all these children being raised by women.
so in your experience, did you feel like there were times when you, as a Black man, as a Black father, your father that you weren't um, you as a father weren't being protected, or your fatherhood wasn't being protected in some kind of way, or were there things out there that was preventing you from being a father who could
I mean,
protect?
I think also we we don't like to talk about this because in the Black community, we always hear about what the man is not doing, what the Black father is not doing. But we also have to recognize that some of our children are traumatized from the actions of their mother. You know, and some women, a lot of women have been charged with using the children to try to even some sort of score or vendetta with the man she had them with. You know, in a situation where those two may not see eye to eye, but by using the children, you confuse the entire foundation of the child's view of life, you know. So what that does is that already undermines the ability of fatherhood, because you're trying to tear down the father in the image of the child. So the child is already looking at itself in a reversed way. You
So
know,
given all that you said there, how are you protecting your sanctity of fatherhood?
bro, it's a hard job being a full-time CEO, and a full-time dad of three boys. My situation is very unique. I don't know anybody that's ever been in my situation. So my expression, my disposition is a living story that when one day become a assistance or a guidance to someone else. You know, at least that's what I believe. The struggle of this process has been for. But my goal is to establish a life for my children where that they for generations can have something on this earth, our heaven as human beings. This is our home, you know, that they can call their own without begging others for anything. We as the Million family will create a legacy that will last for generations of not only wealth and health and success, but making a positive impact on our families and our communities and humanity as a whole is the goal. And this is what I'm inspiring into my children. So that's why it's important for the man to be present, to show their seed the idea of the future, the legacy of the future. The man is very, his confidence is built by another man, because men sharpen men like steel sharpens steel. So when you displace a father or displace the image of the father in a child's mind, the child begins to lose the image of itself, you know, or themselves.
So, in other words, also what you're saying then is you're doing some things to protect your sanity of fatherhood, but there also should be, it takes other fathers or other men, if you will, to come together as a collective to sharpen each other so that they are protecting themselves in terms of the sanctity of their fatherhood. Is that a synopsis?
Absolutely. And the things that I do, like I said, because my situation is very unique, I'm trying not to go too much into it. But you know, making sure that your children get the necessary therapy they need. Because sometimes in divorces and breakups, you go through situations that you don't realize how traumatizing it is to the child. But if you're going through something, the children are going to feel it if both parents are in turmoil.
Yes.
You know, so making sure your child gets the necessary therapy, because they may tell you certain things, but they also may tell a stranger something totally different.
Yeah.
You know, so that's what I learned, is that give your child a chance to release any negative energy from their experience and accept it for what it is, because that is their experience.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I learned in this process. And stepping up, you know, being a full-time dad, man, it's not an easy job. That's cooking, that's cleaning, that's homework, and that's maintaining my show, maintaining my business, and my expectation is my clients, and having people's lives in my hands on top of my three sons.
Yeah, I can't imagine what it's all the. I really can't imagine, because I don't have children, but I do definitely sympathize and empathize, and I do understand what you're saying about the sanctity of fatherhood and protecting that. So with that whole process that you talked about, I have to assume, of course, that that involves institutions like courts and what have you.
Mhm.
Do you think that there are enough things in place in terms of institutions that help Black men protect their fatherhood, or is there not much of anything in place when it comes to institutions to protect Black fatherhood?
Well, I wouldn't say that there is none. I mean, that would be ignorant for me to say because I'm sure there's programs out there. But I can speak of one that helped me see the best way or structure to be a father. And a lot of mine came from life experience and my unique situation and my relationship with my father and how that happened when I was young.
Mhm.
That created a certain love or a certain compassion for fatherhood. However, that structure and that way of organization of how to lead men, I learned that by being in the Nation of Islam. That helped me see what it was like to be a stand-up Black man, clean from head to toe, you know, clean diet, clean mind, clean thoughts, clean, you know, clean living, you
Mhm.
know, and it showed me organizing Black men moving together for one common cause, you know, and that is what we're missing in our families, in our communities, is our ability to unify. You know, we've always picked out you too dark, you too light, you too tall, you too short, your hair too curly, you gonna steal the money. You know, we always find as
Yeah.
Black people some sort of reason of why we can't work together. If you look at, you know, other communities, they don't have those problems.
Mhm.
You know, so we have to also look deep within to find those solutions and remove those small impediments that we have to create better circumstances in our home life so that we can, you know, protect the Black family.
Yeah. Well, most Black Americans, male and female, are not Muslim. They're not in the Nation of Islam. So, how do you think that there should be some elements from the Nation of Islam that should be incorporated into?
Yeah,
Uh,
so you know, you don't have to be. I'm just saying this was my path, you
mhm,
know, where I learned. You know, you don't necessarily see me in a suit and bow tie, or, you know, nothing like that. You
mhm.
know, and nor am I sitting here trying to confess to someone to, hey, believe in a specific type of religion. But I'm saying the structure of how to build a Black man for
Mhm.
family structure, for a community, for business. The Nation of Islam has that package
Mhm.
that all Black people can use, regardless if you're Christian, you're atheist, you're whatever you call yourself.
Yeah.
We as Black people need uh, guidance, you
Mhm.
know, because we have gone under a specific circumstance that no other human being has been through. So the solutions to our problem are a bit different than those around the world. You
So
know,
yeah. So what's interesting, what I'm hearing you saying as well, and correct me if I'm wrong here, is that for the most part, the Black community doesn't really need government or institutions to protect the community or to protect the sanctity of fatherhood. You're saying that it has to come from within the community itself.
absolutely. That's like you don't see uh you don't see the Hispanic community come over here or the Latino community come over here and say, hey, we need help with fatherhood. You don't see the Jewish people come over here and say, hey, look, we need help with fatherhood and all these problems that we got amongst each other. No, they sit down amongst their own communities and come up with their own resolves. We as a people have to get to that inclination where when we have our problems that we solve them together.
So
Now, yes,
why don't you think that we are there? Why do you think that the Black community has this collective mindset when it comes to with the community, the family, but on this particular topic, protecting the sanctity of fatherhood?
um, You said, why don't you think that we have not been able to become to
Yeah,
collectively together?
yeah. On this particular topic, is yeah,
I mean, there's so many facets of the reasons why. We don't have the knowledge of self. You don't know yourself, you're not going to act in the right function. It's kind of like a lion in a circus. That's like the black man, you know? You took him out of his natural habitat, which was rulership, godship, you know, high science and math, and you rip him away from his original language, his tongue, his culture, and you put him in a cage. And then you make him dance and do whatever you want him to do, and then throw him out and say, hey, go act like a lion. I mean, it's not possible.
yeah. That's a very, very good analogy. I don't think I've ever heard anyone use that before, so I may have to steal that from you.
Yeah, man, please. We all are in the same universe. We don't have none of this. We don't own none of it. All the knowledge, it all stays.
Yes, that is very, very true. Well,
Yes, sir.
I just found it very interesting because on the positive side, I do hear more and more people, young men and women, who are starting to change their mindset regarding the community, like you said, fatherhood, and it is your generation, which is generation. What's your generation again?
So I'm the 90s.
The '90s. So that would be. Uh, I'm getting
So
my.
after us is what? Generation X, and then we are the
Well, you're not Gen Z. Okay,
nah, generation I don't know.
millennials. That's what you are.
The millennials. There you go.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so you're a millennial. So I do hear more millennials talking differently about fatherhood, and I'm referring to millennials who of Black Americans, that is. So that's a positive. And you're one of those millennials, young Black men who is taking a different approach or trying to break that curse, if you will. You know, from
Yeah, brother. It's an
yeah,
uphill battle for sure.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
a lonely road to the top.
It is, and it has been the case for a lot of men. And I think that uh, you know, hindsight's 2020, and I think that a lot of Black men, if they knew what they knew back then, what they know now, they would probably do some things differently. But you can't go back in time.
Definitely not.
But I'm kind of curious. Do you think it's too late, or do you think it's still possible for all Black men, Black American men, regardless of the age and generation, to uh, look into this issue of protecting the sanctity of fatherhood, and maybe uh, whether they are 20, 50, 70, or 80, uh, can get.
So what I learned is that human beings are set to trends. If you can catch what I'm getting ready to say. Human beings like trends. They like to repeat things, whether it's themselves, the way they learn, or watching other people do things. They want to, for whatever reason, we're repeaters. We're all repeaters in some kind of fashion. The way we learn something from someone, we're repeating something, right?
History does
So
repeat itself, and that's something that I come to believe and accept.
absolutely, absolutely. So what we need to do is put ourselves in a position first where the Black man is equally opportunity has an equal opportunity to provide a natural right,
Mhm.
okay, among civil human beings is the ability to provide some sort of service or good to others, right?
Yeah.
So I think us being able to have a career front, you know, because you can have, you know, babies and children and be a good father, but if you don't have the money to sustain that family,
Mhm.
then there's going to be turmoil and frustration and pain and trauma.
Is that an attack
That
on Black fatherhood when those things come about?
absolutely, and the disparity and equality in our economy is a clear war, I would say. There's always
Mhm.
been a war against the Black man.
Yeah.
even amongst our own selves,
Mhm.
and the amount of strife and negativity that we give to each other as Black men, and the hatred that we have, and the envy and the disunity that we have amongst ourselves. Most of our cells are being destroyed by ourselves. You know, we killing each other, unfortunately, because we still stuck in that ignorance. So yeah, there's a responsibility on multiple fronts. You know, there's a responsibility for the people who put us in this condition.
Mhm.
There's a responsibility on us to get ourselves out of it. So there's a two-line responsibility. We can't just say, pay me, give me, but then we take our money and give it right back to them, and
Mhm.
don't buy our own freedom, buy our own land, buy our own farms, our own educational systems. If we
Yeah.
don't like the way our children are being educated, we have to organize an organized front where we're creating our own schools, our own farms, our own stores, our own economy, where we can create jobs among ourselves, where we accept each other for who we are, and we're not judging each other based off the color of our skin or our cultural background.
Well, let me ask you this. The two things with that. Okay, so we are in the United States of America, and this is the most capitalistic country on the planet. So capital is needed. And let's say, well, historically, when the Black community has been able to set aside itself, if you will, uh, and establish its own community where the money was being circulated within the community, uh, those communities came under attack. And that's in American history. So you look at Rosewood, you look at Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, Black Wall Street, you look at Wilmington, North Carolina, you look at Atlanta, you look at other parts of Florida, other cities. But I'm naming places across the country. We can just say uh, Red Summer 1919, a year when a lot of Black cities a lot of cities where Black populations were burned down. My point is this, to that second point, uh, if the Black community were to uh, somehow be self-sustaining, if I'm hearing you correctly, how is the community to protect itself from others who will come and try to take that like they did in
Oh,
history?
that's a great question. Every nation has an army. Every nation has a military. Every nation has a protector, right? And in some way, just like, for example, this is how I see it, right? So you know how you got Chinatown, you got Spanish, where, or a town or an area where the Latino community just completely just bought out and took over. This is how we strategically, as a Black community, begin to take our stake in this country, because it belongs to us just as much, or not even more, of the counterparts of those who were the people who brought us here, or grandparents and
Mm.
parents who brought us here, because we are the ones who put the work in. We are the ones who made the economy, not only for America so expanded, but the economy for the entire world was expanded based on the slave trade and the amounts
Mhm.
of free labor and production that created.
So let me,
So
yeah,
yes, sir.
sorry to interrupt. So let me be the devil's advocate here for a second. But with all that you just said, and given the history in this country over the last 400 years, with all of that, there has also been uh, allies of the Black community, if you will. And I'm referring to the Jewish allies over the years. There's been, of course, some white allies over the years. So,
Well, that's fine. That's great. All that's great, but we just know it's not enough. It's not enough. It's clearly not enough. And it's so systematic, and it's really right in our faces, Black people. I don't know. We really just gotta click the switch. If you go in every state in America, the condition of Black people is the same.
yes,
Literally,
that is
they're
correct.
pushed
That is
out
true.
to the worst parts of the state, or the state where the parts where they feel like are less wanted,
Mhm.
right? The housing is close quarters. They live close to each other. Ain't much yard. Ain't much. It's low income,
Mhm.
low education schools, because they're not funded due to the tax. I mean, it's literally the same thing replicated in Texas, California, DC, Nebraska, wherever there's Black people, the condition is the same. So you have to ask yourself.
And that's why I ask you about infrastructure. That's why I ask you about institutional institutions in general, the institution of the U.S. government, the institution of the court systems, all of that. Do you not think that those play a role in terms of the Black community being subjugated to where it is? And do you think that those play a role in terms of the Black father not being able to protect his sanity, if you will, or the sanctity of fatherhood, if you will? So, I mean, this, I know there are a lot of parts to it, you know, and
yeah, it's a big task, man.
Yeah.
The resurrection of the Black man and the Black family is a big job. It's like Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead, if you think about it. I mean, because like I said, I gave you that analogy. It's like taking a circus lion and trying to make him one that goes back in the wild again. You know, it's trying to retrain the mind to be back to yourself. A man who's responsible for his family, who takes care of his business, who organizes community. Yeah. You know, it's going to take us some time and learning process to get back into that.
And given that's going to take us some time, wouldn't you then agree that the time that we need to get there, that process has to include some kind of protections along the way?
I think there has to be a process. There has to be programs put in place that deal specifically with educating the so-called Negro, specifically dealing with family units, relationships, finances, these things that in our projects or in the Section 8 zones, that this is information they just don't get.
Mm-hmm.
Education about stocks and bonds, and of course you're buying into their system again, but we're giving you different ways of financing or structured finance, structured income. And then people like me who are entrepreneurs, you know, having that ambition to create opportunities, create leverage for our community where they have jobs or a certain level of respectable employment. You know, because a lot of us, the young men don't want to work for 10, 12, 13. They want 18, 20, 22, and $25 an hour, you know, because it converts to what they make on the streets, you know, which is,
in other words, it's a livable wage.
Exactly. It's a livable wage. So these are the type of things that myself and other entrepreneurs need to, you know, continue to push. And the more we blossom, the more we grow, the more jobs we give to the communities. We as entrepreneurs, Black entrepreneurs, need to come together as well from different aspects or trades to figure out how we can come together to make a positive impact for employment and creating opportunities in our community. You know, there's so many fronts and assets. We need to talk down with Black farmers and Latino farmers and come and bring these foods to the food deserts, which are in usually the lower income Black communities, actually giving them fresh foods and fresh produce versus the last of the last that they drop off in the hood. You know, so, you know, the things that you get in Alexandria Whole Foods is not the same type of food that you get in the Giant right there on Southeast. You know, it's two different types of quality of food, but these people, they deserve that too. You know what I'm saying? But their life is just structured where they can't obtain or access or don't even have the knowledge of what real or good quality food is.
But is it solely the responsibility of the father to protect the family, if you will, or to protect his fatherhood, to try to make sure that those things come about, that they get the good food that others get in the more affluent communities?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
because that's your family. As it's like when I think of a family unit, I think of the lion, and it's just so important for the male of the household to set the tone,
Mm-hmm.
to set the tone of health, to set the tone of wealth, to set the tone of character, to set the tone of mindset. And the way you protect your children is number one by your example. Is first is at home, but number two, but by every day when you wake up, what are you doing when you step out the house to make the world a better place for your children and your family and your community? So it starts first with ourselves and our own actions, our own deeds.
Yeah.
But then it begins to have a compound interest when we get other people surrounding us involved.
But you and I both know that the Black community is not a monolith. And so, it's not monolithic. So we're not going to have uh, everyone thinking the same way or
Oh
agreeing.
yeah, absolutely not.
Okay.
And it's not supposed to be. Just imagine if every human being on the earth was the same. I mean, this would be an absolutely boring place. But but the beauty about God and our universe is that infinite creations,
Mm-hmm.
and we all have a gift that we have to offer to our universe, literally at the same time that we all exist. We
Yeah.
all possess a gift. And that is the gift that we are here on the journey to find, give it, and share it with others. So that is the goal, is to work the gifts that we've been given to make a positive impact, not only as a father, but as a family man, community, and as businessmen as well.
Well, I think that's a very good place to end this conversation. We started out talking about protecting the sanctity of Black fatherhood. And I really have to thank you greatly for your very candid insight. I think it's something that people need to hear.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for answering my questions. And I would definitely love to have you back at some point to expand this conversation on protecting the sanity of fatherhood, because
Yes, sir.
I don't think that that's a conversation that I've really heard much about out there at all. And I think more people will want to hear more about this particular topic.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Sean. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. And to the viewers out there, again, thank you for listening and watching the Offshoot. Please go to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Your subscription does help the growth and support of this organization. We are an independent news site. And also check us out on Twitter, or you can go to our website, which is www.theoffshoot.org. So again, thank you for listening to the Offshoot. We hope to see you again. And Mr. Dawnta Million, thank you, and I hope to have you back.
Thank you, sir.
And for all those out there, if you need a remodel of your home, please check out Dawnta Million's
absolutely.
And full disclosure, Dawnta did remodel my home. He did my home from top to bottom.
Beautiful home, sir.
Yeah, thank you. I do think I have a beautiful home, and people do come over and they still years later say, man, you have a beautiful home. And that's thanks.
That's awesome. Yes, sir.
So
thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. So again, thank you all for watching. Again, please go and subscribe to the channel on YouTube and check us out on Twitter at The Offshoot. Thank you, and then have a good afternoon. And Mr. Dawnta Million, thank you. And again, I will talk to you very